All right, our first unit here, our first lesson in linear equations is rate of change. By the time you get done with this video today, you should be able to, number one, look and determine whether or not a table is a linear relationship. And if it is a linear relationship, students should be able to identify the rate of change in it. All right, so first, before we go ahead and look at some tables, let's go ahead and look at some vocabulary words. The first vocabulary word that I'm going to look at is linear relationship. And a linear relationship is a relationship between two quantities, quantity y and quantity x, and these are quantities that are found on a table or on a graph that form a straight line graph, okay? Our quantities y and x are going to be on tables today, and we're going to identify the y and x value, and they would lead into forming a straight line graph and what would make them a linear relationship. Okay. The other vocabulary word that we're going to look at here is constant rate of change. Constant rate of change is the rate of change between any 2 points in a linear relationship. So typically you might be able to look at that on a graph, or in this video, we're going to look at it on a table. So we're going to look at what is the change between 2 points on the table, all right, for this linear relationship. And when we do that, we're going to be able to find and identify a constant rate of change. Okay, and I think of constant rate of change, something that's constant, that means it continues going and going and going, all right? And rate of change is that something changes, all right? Just quick review, in 7th grade, you learned about rate of change, and it's the change in the y value over the change in the x value, okay? So that's just a quick review of rate of change. So constant rate of change is something that's constant, where the y value and the x value are constantly changing. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at a couple examples. The first example I have is, I think of when I download music on my phone. Okay, sometimes it takes a while to download. So the number of songs to the time, okay, that being minutes. My x value is my time. My y value is the number of songs, okay? So I know at 0 minutes, I will have 0 songs downloaded. After 1 minute, I have 2 songs downloaded. After 2 minutes, I have 4 songs downloaded. After 3 minutes, I have 6 songs downloaded. After 4 minutes, I had 8 songs downloaded, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this table, and I'm going to look at what were the rate of change on this, what was the rate of change on this table. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the value, the x value. And I notice here they went from 0 to 1, so plus 1. I noticed that from 1 to 2, it also went up by 1. From 2 to 3, it went up by 1. And 3 to 4, it also went up by 1. So I noticed that my x value on the table has a constant rate of change of 1. So now I'm going to look and see what is the constant rate of change for the number of songs. So from 0 to 2 I went up 2, so I'm going to do plus 2. From 2 to 4, it went up 2 again, and so that's a plus 2. From 4 to 6, that's up another 2. And then from 6 to 8, it went up 2 again. All right. So I noticed that my change in my y value on this linear relationship table, it went up by 2 each time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at those 2 constant rates of change, and I'm going to write a rate of change with it. And so the rate of change, as the y value changed by 2, I noticed that my x value changed by 1, and I noticed that it was constant on this table. So the rate of change for this one would be 2 songs for every 1 minute, or per minute. Okay, so the rate of change is 2 songs for every minute, or every 1 minute, or per minute, however you want to say. Okay, let's go ahead and look at another table. I like to bake every once in a while. One of my favorite things to bake is Monster cookies, and so one of those things, or a couple of things that are needed in Monster cookies, are sugar and eggs. Okay, sugar is going to be my y value. Eggs are going to be my x value. Okay, so if I put 2 eggs in, I will have put 3/4 of a cup of sugar in. Okay, if I put 4 eggs in, I will have 1 1/2 cups of sugar. If I put 6 eggs in, I will have 2 1/4 cups of sugar. And then if I put 8 eggs in, I will have 3 cups of sugar. All right. So what I want to do again is look for what is the constant rate of change. So on my table, I look at this and I see, okay, this went up by 3/4. Up here, it went up by 3/4. And then up here, it went up by 3/4. Okay. Number of eggs went up by 2. From 4 to 6, it went up by 2. And from 6 to 8, it went up by 2. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and write this as a rate of change. And again, noticing that the sugar is the y value and eggs are my x value. So this y constant value is going to go on top. So I'm going to put 3/4 on top. And then the number of eggs change is going to go, the constant change is going to go on the bottom. So I have 3/4 over 2. All right. Another way to write this, or another one equivalent to this, is a lot of people don't like to write it with fractions here. What they'll do is they'll look for where there are 2 whole numbers by chance, and I see there's a location right here on the table. So another way to write that would be every 3 cups of sugar, I'm going to have to add 8 eggs to my batch for my monster cookies. So those 2 previous examples we did right here, those are both examples of positive linear relationships. So now let's go ahead and look at 2 negative linear relationships. All right. The first one here is going to involve a little bit of a bank account. So I'm going to have a balance in a bank account. And then it's also the number of transactions. So every once in a while when you go, sometimes you withdraw money. And if you withdraw money, you take money out of a bank account. If you deposit money, you add it into a bank account. Okay. So what I might do is, for example, I might have a balance of $200, maybe that your parents or somebody has started in your account. Okay. And then after 3 transactions, you had that $200. Okay. So, and then you made another 3 transactions. Oops, I forgot to identify my X value and my Y value here. I apologize. Oops, sorry, this would be now 6 total transactions, and you would have $170 left over. You make 3 more transactions for a total of 9, and now you have $140 left over. Okay. And then you make 3 more transactions again, and you have $110 remaining in your bank account. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this table, and I'm going to try to determine what is the constant rate of change. So first thing I do is I look at the number of transactions. I notice from here to here it was positive 3. From 6 to 9, it was a positive 3. And from 9 to 12, it was a positive 3. So I noticed that my change in X each time was 3. So I'm going to go ahead and write that over 3. Up here, I'm going to look for what was my constant rate of change. I noticed it was at 200. It went down to 170. So it went down. So I'm going to put minus, or in this case, a negative. It went down 30. I noticed from 170 to 140, it went down 30 again. From 140 to 110, it went down 30 again. So I noticed as this transaction went up by 3, my balance decreased by 30 each time. And to show that decreased, okay, I'm going to put that constant rate of decrease in on top of it, or that change of y value. So I'm going to put a negative 30. So my rate of change is negative 30 over 3, or my balance went down $30 for every 3 transactions. But I could simplify this down into a unit rate. A unit rate would be anything that's over 1. So for like every 1 transaction, if I was trying to figure out how much money I withdrew each transaction, so going from 3 to 1, I would have to divide by 3, which means I'd have to divide this by 3. And when I take negative 30 and divide by 3, I get negative 10. So my unit rate of change for balance and the number of transactions is negative 10 over 1, whereas originally I just had a constant rate of change of negative 30 over 3. Okay, so this is constant rate of change. This is my constant unit rate of change. All right, let's look at one more. Let's look at, you ever baked before and then taken something out of the oven? So I'm going to look at time and temperature. Time is going to be my X value. Temperature is going to be my Y value. Okay, So when I take something out after 1 minute, it's 350 degrees. So it's a little warm. After 2 minutes, I notice the temperature has dropped to 325 degrees. After 3 minutes, I notice it has dropped to 300 degrees. After 4 minutes, it's dropped to 275 degrees. So again, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and look at what is the constant rate of change in the table. I noticed here that my time went up by 1 minute each time. So from 2 to 3 went up by 1, from 3 to 4, that's a +1. So I'll go ahead and look down here at my temperature. I noticed that my temperature went from 350 to 325, so that means it went down 25 degrees. So I gave it a negative. From 325 to 300 is another negative 25, and from 300 to 275 is a negative 25 also. Okay, so I see here that I kind of noticed that a pattern had developed. As my time went up 1 minute, my temperature dropped 25 degrees. So I'm going to write this as a constant rate of change, noticing that the temp is the y value. So I have to write this constant change on the top. So it changed by 25. The time changed by 1, so I'm going to write that over 1. This one is already identified as a unit rate. So for every minute that passed, the temperature on the food dropped 25 degrees. All right.